Hi, I'm Kenny Joya. Welcome to another one of my tutorials. In this video, I'm going to show you automation preferences in REAPER. Now to get to our preferences, we'll go to the option menu, and right down here is our preferences. We'll scroll down under editing behavior to automation. And right over here in this window is how we control the preferences for automation. Now if you automate tracks a lot, you're going to want to know this, because it's very powerful and it can change how we work, as you might want to change these things on the fly. So let's start from the top. Right over here, we have our automation recording return speed. By default, it's set to 100 milliseconds. So if we're recording automation and then we stop recording it, it's going to jump back to the original level within 100 milliseconds. Let me show you. Let's put this track into touch mode. Now you should know in this video, I'm using a control surface. So you can watch the fader here or here, but I'll be controlling it from a real fader. So if you see this moving, I'm moving my control surface. So if I move my fader, it starts recording some automation. If I pull it down and let go, it jumps back up to the original level because we're in touch mode. And if we zoom in, the speed or the time it takes to get back to that level is 100 milliseconds right here. But we could change it. We can make it 0. Then it'll jump back instantly. Pull our fader down. If I let go, it jumps back up instantly. So if you want that behavior, just set this to 0. But we could also make it longer. Let's make it 1,000 milliseconds or a full second. Now if I pull the fader down and let go, it takes a full second to get back to the original level, making it smoother. But for most situations, 100 milliseconds is perfect. It won't glitch, so it'll be smooth, but it'll also happen pretty quickly. Pull the fader down, let go, and within 100 milliseconds, it jumps back up to the original level. The next option over here is the action transition time. This is very similar to the return speed, except it's going to happen based on actions. So let's say I'm writing a level, and I'm really happy with it right here. I hit pause. Let's say I want to copy that to another spot, like over here. So if I go to my actions and type in the filter, write envelopes, I can choose this action right here. Write current values to time selection. So if I choose this, it writes the current value over here to the time selection. Put it here instead, hit run, it puts that value over here. But if you notice, it goes slowly from one to the other. It's not a hard edit. That value can be adjusted right over here. If we change it to 0 and do the same thing, there's no transition from the beginning or the end. Or if you want a longer transition, we could change it to 1,000 or a full second. Now we could drag from here to here, do the same thing, and the transition is a full second going from this value to this value. And the same on this side. So that can be adjusted right over here. But the default is 100 milliseconds. Now the next option, right over here, is going to automatically add envelopes when tweaking parameters in automation write modes. And this is on by default. When this is turned on, just switching to a write mode and writing automation is going to create the envelope. So we'll switch to latch, move our fader, and it automatically creates this envelope. The same with pan, just move it, and it creates a pan envelope. So it does it automatically for us, making it a lot quicker. But if you didn't want that option, you could turn it off right here. And now if you go into write mode, or latch mode, or touch mode, just moving the fader while we're playing doesn't record any automation. And it doesn't create the envelope. Now you have to actually arm it for it to work. So you'd go in here to volume, and make sure it's visible, and you arm it. And now you can write automation. But again, by default, it's turned on, as it saves that extra work. The next option over here is going to display read automation feedback from hidden envelopes. It's on by default. So if I go to read mode, we're going to see this fader move here and here. And if we hide it, we still see that movement, even though it's hidden. But if you don't want to see it, just turn it off over here, and we don't see it. We're still going to hear it, but it needs to be visible right here for the faders to move. But again, it's on by default. So we're going to see it even if it's hidden. The next option over here is off by default, which allows writing automation to hidden envelopes. So if I go into latch mode and try to arm it, it's now visible. So I can write to it. But if I make it invisible, it's no longer armed. We can't arm it without it being visible. If we turn this off, it's not armed. I can move the fader, but nothing's being recorded. But if I want the option, I can just turn it on here, and now I can arm it, make it invisible, and still write to it, because it's still armed. So now I'm writing automation right now, even though we're not seeing it. And if we want to see it, just make it visible. And this is what we just recorded. But we can't record automation to envelopes if they're invisible unless we choose this option right here. Allow writing automation to hidden envelopes. And again, it's off by default. The next option is to reduce envelope point data when recording or drawing automation. Let's write some automation. See all the points that are created? If you want to reduce it, we can just right-click it and reduce it right here. And you'll see, even if we go this low with 18 points instead of 65, it's still going to sound about the same. So we don't need all these extra data points. It'll work just fine with 24. So by default, this is turned on to reduce those. But if you don't want to reduce them, you can turn it off and draw, and you get a lot more points. But if you want to reduce it ahead of time, just leave this on, which again is on by default. Now this next option over here is pretty interesting. When recording automation and stopped, it's going to add an additional point before the edit position. Let me show you. Let's go to write mode. Let's record a little bit. Find a level. And let's go over here, move our fader, and it creates another point. We'll go over here, go up, or go down. Every time we do that, it creates a point before that spot. The purpose of this is to keep the level consistent. So the level over here stays at a straight line. So if we go over here, we can bring it up, and everything before it stays here. But we can change that behavior. If we choose this instead, do not add additional points. Now if we go over here and bring it down, it doesn't create a new point. It goes slowly from here to here. And you might be thinking, why would you want that? Well, it works really well for pan. And we can write some panning information just by going right here. And let's say we want to slowly pan from left to right at bar 3. If we move it over now, it goes slowly. Go to this spot over here, zoom out so we can see that. And now we're creating some panning that goes smoothly from left to right, to left, to right, to left, to right. We couldn't do that with the default setting. If we did it this way, pan it to the left, then go over here and pan it to the right, it stays panned to the left over here and goes quickly to the right and back again. So it's more like a square wave. So if you want it to go slowly like that, just choose this option. Do not add additional points. And it will slowly go from one parameter to the other, which is also good for fading. Let's clear this. Let's go back to volume. Let's say we wanted to fade from this level here to a level over here. It's going to slowly fade from those two levels. We'll go over here and fade back down to this level, and so on. So it'll create smooth transitions from one level to another. But the default creates that additional point. But there's one other option. It can add points before and after edit position. Let me show you how this works. Let's get a level like over here. See how thin that is? Not very useful. Just that one moment, it brings it down. But we could adjust that, how wide this is, by going back to our return speed. Let's set this to a full second or 1,000 milliseconds. And now if we do the same thing, go right over here, bring the fader down, it creates a smooth transition of 1,000 milliseconds from one level to another. So if you wanted to fade in right from here, just pull the fader down to whatever level you want to use. And where this is useful, because you can fade in on our media items, but sometimes you want to start not all the way down. You don't want to fade from nothing, maybe just halfway. Just go to the section, pull the fader down halfway, and now you created a fade in from one level to the other. And it's exactly 1 second long, which we can change right here. But again, the default for this is to add an additional point just before the edit position. Now the next option over here is when adding volume or pan envelopes, it's going to apply the trim to the envelope and reset the trim. And by default, it's set to always. So let me show you how this works. If you're not running automation on your tracks and you're just getting levels, you're basically in trim mode. So we grab our fader right here, bring it down to say -10. That's where our level sits. But if we create an envelope, we don't want the envelope to start at 0. We want to move the trim setting to that envelope. And that's going to happen with the default setting. So if I go right here and go to write mode and create an envelope, that envelope is set to -10, which is where we started. So now if we want to write automation, we're starting from that level, the -10. And when we're done, if we switch this back to trim read now changes. Now it's set to 0 instead of -10. It's still going to sound exactly the same. It just moves the trim volume to the envelope. But it gives us the extra level of control. We can use our envelope or our automation and still control it after the fact using our trim level. But when you first jump to automation or envelopes, you want the level over here to jump over there. And that's what happens when it's set to always. If we choose this option in read write, it's only going to switch it when we go to a write mode. And now if we create an envelope while we're still in trim mode, the envelope is at 0, which makes sense if you just want to draw. You want to keep your original level at -10, but you want to draw some automation in, starting at 0. But if you switch to a write mode, like write, then it's going to move our -10 setting to the envelope, because it knows you want to write automation. But if you want it never to do that and keep them separate, we choose the preference over here, never. And now it's never going to switch. So if I create a volume envelope, the volume envelope starts at 0. Even if we switch to read mode, or touch mode, or write mode, the volume envelope starts at 0 dB. And our trim level stays at -10. But if we put it back to the default, it works the opposite way. If it's set to -10, if we switch it to write and create an envelope, the -10 moves here and our trim level resets to 0, which makes sense to be the default. As when you're writing envelopes, you want to start with your initial level, which was your trim level at -10. So again, the default is set to always. The next option is after recording automation in write mode, it can switch to a different mode. And let me show you why you want to do that. By default, it stays in write mode. Let's go to write mode. And this only matters for write mode. So let's say we're going to record some automation. We'll go up and down and up. Now if we play this back without switching on mode, because we're still in write mode, it erases the automation. It rewrites all new automation, because that's what write mode does. So it's a good idea to change it, to maybe switch to touch mode. So now you can be in write mode, record some automation, and then when you play it back, it switches automatically to touch mode. So it's not going to rewrite anything unless we touch our fader. It plays back what we just recorded. And we can switch it to any mode we want. Touch mode, maybe trim mode or read mode. Start in write mode, record some automation, hit stop, and it goes to read. And this is also important for doing looping. Let's say we leave this in write mode. Let's say we're in write mode and we're looping a section right over here. If it stays in write mode, it's going to constantly erase it. So I find a level and I let go, it keeps writing. Go a bit lower and it keeps writing over it. So it's going to erase anything in the loop. So if you don't want that behavior, just change it here. Maybe switch it to touch mode. If I find my level, I let go and it jumps back and now it's in touch mode. Where if I kept it in write mode, find my level, and if I let go, it's going to end up erasing it, which is actually a good technique for automating sections. But if you don't want that behavior, switch it to another mode, like touch mode, and it'll switch out of write mode into touch mode on the loop. Which brings us to this other mode over here, reset latch state when looping. Up here just refers to write mode, but down over here will affect latch, which is going to reset our latch state when we loop. So now this time we'll go to latch mode, and let's start recording automation. And when it loops, notice what happens. I'll grab my fader right around here, find my level, and if I let go, it stays there, but then when it loops, it resets. It no longer records in latch mode. We're still in latch mode, but it resets it. Because this is on by default, but if we turn it off, we can use it to get levels for sections. Let me show you. Let's say we want to get a level for this section right over here. We can stay in latch mode, we can find the perfect level, and then let go, and it's going to write just on that loop. So the same thing over here. Create a loop. This is the section we want to record to. Find the good level, maybe over here, let go, and then it records on top of it, recording a constant level just for that section. But again, that's only going to work if we turn this off, and it's on by default. So if it's on, and we try to do that, and get a good level, if I let go, it resets during the loop. So if you want the other behavior, just turn it off. And we can get our level for our section, let go, and it stays constant with that level. So that's pretty much it for the automation preferences. As you can see, we can do so much more with automation by knowing and changing our preferences. So I hope you learned something, I hope you can use it, and I'll see you next time. Thanks.